Today we're going to talk about how you can stand out without selling out in this age of online influence. And maybe you're even thinking, why? Why do I need to stand out in this online space? And that's what we're going to cover in today's session. You know, in the last 2 years, I've worked with over 2,000 business leaders and entrepreneurs. And more often than not, they tell me it feels a little bit like this. It's like there's so many people trying to crowd the space and compete for attention. And they're like, how do I find a way for my brand to stand out in the midst of all of this? And I can certainly relate. You know, my background is I worked for over 16 years for one of the big 4 banks, doing all sorts of comms and marketing roles. And then I worked for the New South Wales government, for the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner for some time. And all the while I had a dream that I wanted to start my own business so that I could start as a speaker, helping other people with what I knew. And this photo of myself with my little boy, you know, I started my own business when he was born, and that was about 3.5 years ago. And I have this vivid memory of sitting in the garden of our little Artarmon garden apartment, sitting there while the baby was asleep. My 4-year-old at the time was being babysat by ABC for Kids. And I sat there in the garden with my notebook, and I was trying to plan out what this business would look like. And you know, I had no list, I had no previous customers. No one knew me or knew me in this context. So I'd worked in corporate, but no one knew me in this new world. And I had no social presence. So I had a couple of social profiles, but certainly nothing in this new space I wanted to go into. And if you can relate to anything I'm about to say, put a yes into the chat box. Because for me, it was like, well, I don't have time to figure this out. I'm trying to do a million different things in my business. At the same time, like how do I do it? It's not as if there's too little information. There's so much information. So how do I work out what's relevant for me? And does it work? So I'm going to put all this effort into this social business, and does it even work? And I don't know if you can relate to this, but certainly I was thinking, like, do people really want to hear from me? And I know that there are some of you who feel this way, because about 75% of my audience usually tells me this afterwards, that there's this moment when you're just about to push send and it's terrifying. And you can't help but think, what will people think of me? Now, the good news is my son is 3.5 years old now. And in this time, I have been persistent and hopefully strategic. And I have the great joy of saying that last year I had one of my dreams come true, and it was to speak at the International Convention Centre to a room of about 700 business owners and able to help them with what I've learned myself about how you can stand out and how you can do it in a way that doesn't sell out on who you are or what you believe in, and actually help people through what you do and how you serve. So I guess the question to you guys is, you know, why do you want to stand out? That was a question I asked you. What is it going to mean for you and your business? And maybe you want to jump into the chat box and write that down now. Now, maybe you're a business leader and you've got a vast amount of experience and expertise, and you could be helping your industry and beyond right now. Or maybe you are a business owner and you think, actually, I've got something to sell, I've got something to share or something to serve. And if only I could work out this online space, I know I could reach more people. From the people that I talk to, more often than not, it comes into these 2 categories. It's about, how do I get known? How do I get known for my expertise or what I do? And it's also about, how do I grow? How do I grow my business? How do I grow my influence or my network? How do I grow, so maybe even my knowledge, so I can learn more in this online space? Now, this has been, I guess, what has driven me has been my passion about how to help business leaders and entrepreneurs. How do they stand out and how do they do it without selling out, and what makes them unique? And this has certainly taken me to speak to big and large audiences, and of course working more on workshops, working in small groups, and at the moment, of course, a lot of those are online. Whether that's about branding, whether that's about digital storytelling, whether that's about setting up systems, whether it's about, you know, amplifying your influence using something like LinkedIn. And just last year, I wrote my first book, which was pretty exciting. And this book is basically a DIY guide so that someone, a leader or a business owner, can do it themselves. It's got all the templates and tools in the book, and you can do that yourself about how to do it. So let's talk about the context, this age of online influence. I say it's because of the rapid penetration of smartphones in the last 10 years. So that means that we've got micro businesses popping up globally. It's also the ubiquity of social networks, like Facebook is like 2.5 billion, which is like 1 in every 4 persons around the world are on Facebook. And of course, the rapid advancement of technology that just keeps on going on. So today I want to share 3 insights that are going to be useful for you, and hopefully at the end I'm going to give you some practical tips that you can immediately apply and use in your business. Now the first one is this: is the shift to online. Is that new? Well, I would say it's becoming more and more important as at this time and in the next year or so. And why is that? I think it's, you see stories like this of the singing happy birthday to the 80-year-old from your balconies. We've been isolated and kept indoors. At the same time, hasn't there been amazing innovations and shifts in business models? I love this one, from using the gin bottles to turn it into sanitizer. At the same time, I think where we've seen technology threaded to the patterns and behavior of our lives, it's become even more important today. Now, you just got to look at some of these statistics. Just look at the upswing: Facebook, Netflix, YouTube, everything is on the up. And it's not just about entertainment, is it? It's how we work and how we operate. Look at this one. Zoom is the one. Gosh, don't you wish you had shares in Zoom 6 months ago? So what that means is the way that we interact. And I know some of you, we've got sales managers, we've got senior leaders that do a lot of travel. And won't it be interesting to see how that starts to shift in this new world? It also means that I hope that we'll get the big conferences come back, but certainly meetings and training is going to shift in the way that we deliver it. And of course, for the retail sector, gosh, the retail sector has been under such a hard time already in the last few years. And the shift to online retail businesses is on the up and up. And I think we'll continue to see this. So what that means is how will you adjust to this online environment? If you've been putting it off, now is the time. It is critical to decide how you respond. And I think it's even this very first question, what will I find when I look for you? It could be as simple as asking yourself that. Now, when it comes to your website, when it comes to your social profiles, when it comes to when someone Googles you, what will they find when they look you up? What is that digital first impression that they're going to have? Whether that's your LinkedIn profile, before you'd meet with the client, it might be the first thing they look at. Now it could be the only point of reference. So what does it say about you? What about your website? When was the last time you updated it? Has it still got photos from circa 1990? Now is the time to think about that digital first impression. Now, the second shift that I'm seeing is a shift to people power. So what do I mean by that? A few years ago, we were introduced to the research which came from the Edelman Institute. And what that told us is that we had begun to see a deterioration of trust on some of the pillars of our society, from government, from not-for-profits, from media, from big banks. And where we saw that erosion of trust, we started to see a shift to the individuals. So the shift sits with individuals, not institutions. So what does that mean? Originally, it was so important to hear, what does the CEO say? What is his view? And then the last 2 years, we've seen more and more that it's actually about your direct report. So what is the influence that your immediate manager has on you? And I think this is really interesting, because I think a way to describe it is to say that brands now have more than ever a human face. Now you just look at LinkedIn. There's 660 million people on LinkedIn globally. In Australia, there is 10 million people. You think about it. Our population is like 25 million, and 10 million of those people are on LinkedIn. So you know what that means, don't you? That we've all become influencers in our own right. Does that mean we've become like the famous Kardashians? Now, I know there's a lot of theories out there that influencers are dead. I would argue that we, the leaders of today, are influencers more than ever before, not only because of what we say, but certainly because of our ability to reach a broader network. Now, just look at this stat from a book called The Social Employee. Employees have 10 times more social connections than a brand does. So just imagine how you're able to amplify out to a broader network because of the people and the power of the people and their networks. And if you're not sure, remember this story, Israel Folau. Now, regardless of what you think about this particular circumstance or the situation, the reality is it showed us more than ever before the influence that one person can have on the reputation of a business. So the question is, how do you become your best influencer? And like, even how does that question sit with you? Do you feel a bit icky of thinking about yourself becoming a great influencer? And I think it's because sometimes we've got these perceptions of what a great or bad influencer can be. Like, are we going to be like the smarmy salesman, the person who all they do is talk about themselves and is trying to put themselves out there and sell and flog and position themselves? Or maybe it's even about, you know, the spammer. It's like this endless stream of crap basically that goes out from breakfast to lunch to random articles and funny photos. Or, you know, is it about the sporadic poster? And look, not to look at anyone, more often than not, this is what people are like that I meet. It's the fact that you maybe put out a great post out onto social and then we kind of like never hear from you again. So I think when it comes down to what makes a great influencer, it's actually a couple of things. It's about the ability to create great content and also get the right frequency or consistency. So for example, you know, the smarmy salesman, what's not great about them is they've got really bad content. That's why we don't like them. Now, where we may have that perception that an influencer is like, we don't want to be like those people who spam people's social feed. Well, the issue is, yes, they're very frequent, but they have terrible content. And so that's part of the issue there. Now, the sporadic poster, which again, not to look at anyone, and yet is where a lot of people find themselves, great content, the issue, just not consistent enough. So kind of what you're trying to aim for to be that standout influencer is to get that balance of, you know, consistency and great content. So that's kind of what we're aiming for there. Now, the third shift to talk about today is the rise of TikTok. So put a yes in the chat box if you have enjoyed a TikTok obsession yourself. Now, during ISO Live, I have loved watching people's creativity on TikTok, creating funny videos. If you have no idea what it is, it's a video sharing platform where you can share videos from 15 seconds to 60 seconds. And it used to be the place for the youth of today, teenagers and young people. And yet we're starting to see a shift as more and more people come onto this platform. So the latest stats, there's about 800 million people using it in about 155 countries. And it was the 5th most downloaded platform last year. And I believe it will probably be either number 1 or 2 this year. But where I think is really interesting, you know, back in January, I was looking on LinkedIn for a brand strategy role. And I saw there was like TikTok job after job after job for TikTok. And so what does that tell us? That they are coming to our country and they are here to stay. So it's not just in Australia, but they're starting to make that global presence. And so I think it is one for us to pay attention to and watch. And it's fascinating to see how businesses are starting to use TikTok to really get cut through into this audience. And so I think where it's useful for you, if you're a business leader and you're using LinkedIn, you're fairly safe in this platform. If you're a business owner, could this be the time for you to try something creative and to branch out into a new platform? And the question really is, Are you taking a social siesta? You know, in social media and this fast moving online environment, we can't just adapt and stick on one platform. We always need to be thinking about what's next. So are you taking a social siesta, or are you being mindful? Because I absolutely love this graphic. It's that even if you try to avoid it, you can't slow down the future. I absolutely love that visual. Could you imagine seeing that? But I think what it really tries to show is, you know, we're not walking along like a footpath, we're walking along a conveyor belt. It's always moving. So how do you stay abreast of what the changes are and keep adapting and shifting as you need to?